She sold 50 million records worldwide, almost half of them in the US, and has had a career spanning 4 decades, all of it on her own terms, while barely compromising her sound. Throughout, she kept herself out of the limelight, avoiding the usual press junkets associated with releasing a new album. So what's the secret behind Sade's continuing success? When Robin Miller, who produced the band's first 2 albums, first met them in 1983, they had never been in a proper studio. The 24-year-old Sade Adu had just finished studying fashion design while working on her creative writing skills. They had some rough homemade 4-track demos of Your Love Is King and Smooth Operator that sounded like a funk band playing free jazz. It was basic, but the songs were good. And then there was that voice. Miller says, "I've always thought there are certain voices that make people feel better. Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole, and Ella Fitzgerald. And when I first heard Sade, I really felt she had it. She also had an amazing effect on people in the studio, both men and women. Her charisma and how she looked." He booked them in for a week. The limitations of not having a computer had an impact on the sound. We used a real piano and a Fender Rhodes piano, painstakingly syncing them up. Of course, 3 years later, you could do this easily using MIDI, but it probably wouldn't have sounded the same. To do this, we had to familiarize the parts, getting away from the free jazz thing. The band's manager took the demos around to record companies, and every label turned them down. They said the tracks were too long and too jazzy. They said, "Don't you know what's happening? Everything is electronic drums now. Tears for Fears, Depeche Mode." This was a bit of a blow, because when we played them to people who came by the studio, we get a fantastic reaction. What they needed was some DIY thinking. Sade's boyfriend played the tracks to friends who worked at Style Bible to Face. They liked both Sade and the music and put her on the cover with the headline, "Sade, the Face of 1984. The band quickly organized a gig at the club Heaven, inviting journalists who witnessed 1,000 people being turned away at the door. The next day, all the record companies tried to sign them. Most of the labels wanted to send her to the US to work with big producers such as Quincy Jones. But Sade had a clear vision of what she wanted to do. So instead of the biggest offer, she took the deal that allowed her to finish what she started. The versions of Your Love Is King and Smooth Operator on Diamond Life are exactly the way they were at the end of that first week. We never remixed them or remastered them. They're the same versions that were rejected by everybody. They recorded 15 tracks in 6 weeks. Then Sade insisted on cutting the album down to the 9 tracks, in which the most she believed. The label wanted to send a few tracks to the US for some cool mixes, but Sade refused, saying the album was exactly how she wanted it. It was quite a battle, which she won. It was clear Sade was good at realizing the bigger picture right from the start. While recording, she worked with the label's PRs and marketing departments, using her background in fashion and creative writing to crop pictures and look at copy, not allowing a sentence, snapshot, or picture to go out unless it fitted. Once the album was released, it was apparent that the label had been right in allowing Sade to hold the reins. Diamond Life went top 10 all over Europe and sold more than 10 million copies worldwide. It turned out there were an awful lot of people who didn't want to buy another Tears for Fears and Talk album. And Sade sounded like nothing else. They went on to court the American R&B audience with Hang On To Your Love, which went to number 1 in the R&B charts, followed by Smooth Operator, which broke her in the US. The album ended up selling almost 4 million copies in the US, with the follow-up, Promise, selling 4.5 million and 9.3 million worldwide. The first British black artist to hit that big in America. These numbers are almost unheard of today, but Sade's success has continued through the decades, despite letting up to 7 years lapse between releases. Miller attributes some of this success to the fact Sade makes records you can play all the way through. I think that's one of the reasons they haven't dated, going back to the first album when she threw out the up-tempo tracks because they didn't fit in. There is, of course, also the sexiness of the music and the fact that having never followed trends gives the music a timelessness. A Sade album is instantly identifiable. Sade is still more comfortable in the studio than on stage, Miller says. It's to do with style. You can craft something to perfection and you can crop pictures, but when you walk on stage, you're gonna look how you look and sound how you sound. With that being said, thank you for watching and thank you for listening. My name is Gary Harrison, and remember, stay humble and stay hungry. Stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.